knows. And it looks like we're recording. All right, let's get started. Thank you everyone for attending the Tier 2 2022 application workshop. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to go over our agenda today. But quickly, I wanted to introduce our staff. So my name is Daniel Sturgios. I am the Grant and Communications Coordinator, and I will be leading this workshop today. We also have with us our Program Director, Samantha Mary Thermos, if she wants to say hi.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're really excited to chat with you today and to get you to apply to Tier 2. It's going to be a great year. So thank you for attending, and feel free during the conversation today to pipe up, ask questions, make recommendations. We're all here to learn, and hopefully it's conversational. So look forward to chatting. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Samantha. And yes, if you guys want to put stuff in the chat or have any questions while I'm going through the presentation, feel free to put them in there and I can answer as best I can. Samantha will be monitoring the chat as well, and we can get started. All right, so on the agenda today, I just want to give a quick general overview of Tier 2 and the program in general. I'll then go into the timeline process of what we're expecting as far as the application timeline, the review process, and the contracting timeline. I'll then jump into a demo of the application, walking you through what you'll be filling out, what we're expecting as far as answers go, and what our board is looking for in your applications. And then at the end, if there's any additional questions that I haven't answered so far, we can answer those at that time as well. In the meantime, though, you can be putting those questions into the chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself and then ask the questions, we can answer it directly.
Do we want to do introductions, Daniel, of the group, of maybe people's names and organizations? That might be great.
Yeah, we can do that. If people would like to just quickly introduce themselves, there is about 25 applicants and there's still more joining, so it might take a bit of time. Do you think we should do 25 introductions,
Just
or?
very quickly, people can just jump in and say their name of their organization and their name, and then we can move on. It's not a full introduction, but just so we know who we have on the phone, it would be great for people to just
Okay.
jump in. I don't think we need to call on names, but people can just pipe up would be great. Maybe starting with those who are on camera first and then move to those on phone.
Yeah, I'll go down the list on my screen. I'll just call on each of your names, and if you want to say your name and what your organization you're with. So starting with Fan Quan.
Hi, I'm Fan Kwan. I am the president of the Salt Lake Chinese Choir.
Awesome. Rachel?
Hi, Rachel Becker, Mill Creek Arts Council.
Awesome. Jennifer?
I'm Jennifer Hamilton.
Sorry,
Jennifer Hamilton. I'm with the Green Urban Lunchbox.
Awesome. Joan White? Oh, you're on mute still.
No? Am I on now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Joan White with the Taylorsville Benyon Heritage Center.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see, Kate Johnson.
I am Kate Johnson with Mountain West Ballet.
Let's see, Tony Diaz.
Tony Diaz with the Makerspace Make Salt Lake.
Awesome. Let's see, Marin.
Marin Spari, the Gale Center of History and Culture in South Jordan.
Cool. David Norton.
Hi, I'm David Norton. I am the treasurer and past president of Utah Classical Guitar Society.
Cool. Wu.
Wu Xu, Salt Lake East Art Club.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. Amanda Lufkin. Okay, I'll move on to Ashley. Okay. How about Debbie Mintout?
I'm with Utah Pride Center.
Awesome. Ian, Clever Octopus? Oh, sorry. Okay. Kate Johnson.
You already did me.
Oh, I did. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay. How about Lee?
Lee Holler, Umbrella Theater.
Cool. Sammy?
Hi, Sammy Ricchio with Hawkwatch International.
Awesome. Seth Miller?
Yeah,
Okay.
can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Seth Miller, the Artistic Executive Director of the Grand Theater.
Oh, the Grand Theater. Okay, cool. Let's see. The names keep jumping around the screen as more people are joining. So, if I skipped you, if you just want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Cheryl Gilhood with the Holiday Arts Council.
Oh, there's Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, I'm Katie Nelson with the Green Urban Lunchbox.
How's it going, Katie? All right, and I think that might be everyone. I think that's everyone. So everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining. And with the introductions, I'll now jump into the rest of the presentation. And again, if you have any questions as I'm going through any of this, feel free to just put them in the chat. All right. So a quick overview of Tier 2. We are a funding program of Salt Lake County. Samantha and I, we administer the program, coordinating its efforts. However, we do not make any of the decisions on the applications themselves. That is up to our Tier 2 advisory board, shown here from a couple years ago when things were still mainly in person. But they have a thorough review process. They review each application individually through subcommittees and such. And so the Tier 2 advisory board is the main people who will be reviewing your applications. Oh, and I meant to say, as we go through the presentation, we'll give you some of the tips and tricks as far as what to consider when putting on your application and what the board will be looking for. All right, so the mission of Zap is to enhance resident and visitor experiences through art, cultural, and recreational offerings. The purpose of Tier 2 funding specifically is to build organizational capacity. So this is not intended to be your main source of, or the majority of your fiscal support for organization, but it's to help increase the work that you're already doing and help build that capacity. And so that way you can enhance the county's cultural offerings as well as what you do in the community. So Tier 2 is just one portion of the ZAP program overall. We also have the Tier 1 and zoological categories. which have their own separate funding processes. And then there's also the percentage of funding that goes to parks and recreation, and they have their own process as well. The Tier 2 program is an annual and competitive process. We do have many longstanding grantees. However, it is good to remember that no one is guaranteed funding, but the board does consider previous years funded as a show of stability. We currently are funding 178 organizations and programs. So the funding can be used either for arts and cultural organizations, as well as arts and culture projects that maybe are not organized through an arts and culture organization, but they do have a specific project that they will use our funding for. We do have a few qualifications in order for you to be considered for Tier 2 funding. All of these qualifications must be satisfied. These are just a few of them. The full list will be on the application, but these are the main ones to consider. You must be actively a 501c3 nonprofit. This is part of your application. We'll be asking for your nonprofit tax exempt letter. You must be providing programming within the county itself. So we do consider, we do know that a lot of you will provide programming outside of the county. We encourage that from a spiritual standpoint. I know a lot of you will be providing programming in Davis County or Utah County, but the Zap money that is funded cannot be used for anything outside of the county. It must be within Salt Lake County itself. And your organization must clearly be in one of the accepted disciplines. These disciplines are determined by policy. You'll want to be choosing the discipline that best aligns with the majority of your programming. So for example, if you provide an art class, but the majority of your organization is, say, visual arts, you'll want to be selecting visual arts as your discipline. Even though arts education is a great discipline, it's not the majority of what your funding would be going towards. So we want you to best be aligned with that. The board reviews applications in subcommittees by discipline, so you'll be reviewed with like organizations. So you'll want to best pick what is associated with what your organization does. Okay, so Zap funding can be used for a lot of things. So again, if you're an arts and cultural organization primarily, you can use it towards general operating support. This is for, anything from salaries to rent, and this provides the most flexibility when you're deciding in your application whether you want to use it towards a specific program or project, or if you want to use it towards general funding. Rent and utilities, staff salaries and artist fees, program supplies, marketing expenses, all of these things are accepted. Any equipment that is specifically not capitalized. If you're applying for a project or program, Zap funds can only be used for that project or program specifically. What Zap does not fund is, it's not an exhaustive list, but there is several things that we do not fund. Your organization, again, if you do programming outside of the county, we encourage that. You just can't use your funding for your Zap funding specifically for that. You can't use it for capital expenses or public art. So like if you want to have a sculpture inside or outside your building, you wouldn't be able to use it for something like that. It can't be re-granted or which includes scholarships, so you can't use it towards another funding source that you plan to facilitate. It can't be used for temporary or permanent staff within school systems. This is because the ZAP's Tier 2 primary use is to provide programming for the public. And we know that many of you do programming within schools, which is great, but we just can't use the funding for providing a full-time or temporary person within the school itself. Other things like endowments, accumulated deficits or debt retirement, lobbying expenses, activities intended primarily for fundraising or endowments or capital campaigns, non-cultural celebratory activities like a neighborhood party or a neighborhood block party, fireworks, no rodeos, activities that are primarily religious in purpose or to promote a religious viewpoint, magazines and newspapers, radio or television broadcasting, recreational, rehabilitative, or therapeutic programs, social service programs, and sister city programs. So when the board reviews your application, we have a scoring rubric, and we'll have a copy of that within the application itself. But this is the three main categories that they're going to be looking for. So artistic and cultural vibrancy, public benefit and outreach, and organizational capacity. These are they're looking to see that you have a strong connection with the community, that you're engaging with qualified and talented art professionals. They're looking to see that your organization is stable, has that stability, and the application is written to give you a good opportunity to show your strengths in each of these areas. So for the questions within the application, you'll be able to speak to how your programming speaks to each of these categories. Okay, so the Tier 2 timeline. If you've been funded, you'll be familiar with this. If you haven't been funded with us before. So as you all know, the deadline for this year is April 29, 2022 at 5 p.m. This is a hard deadline. So regardless of what may be happening, for example, I know that a few years ago there was a power outage due to a snowstorm. Even if that happens, your application will still be due at 5 p.m. on April 29. This is to create fairness to the other applicants who did get their application in on time. We strongly recommend turning in your application at least 48 hours early, just to make sure that you have in fact submitted it. You will have an opportunity after you submit your application to make edits if you'd like. But at least just getting your application in by the deadline with the correct information 48 hours early is a best practice. Then after the application closes on April 29, May through August, the board will be reviewing each of these applications in their subcommittees, reviewing each individual application one by one and scoring them. After they have scored each of their applicants, they'll make their recommendations and will present those to council. That will happen around August, September this year. And then following council approval, we will then begin the contracting phase. That will happen for the remainder of the year, October through December. This is when the funding process is being communicated. You'll receive what you've been recommended for funding, having this contract signed. And then in the beginning of the year of January 2023, you'll receive your first payment. So after you've signed your contract, you'll receive your first payment in around January of 2023, and that will be 60% of your total award amount. You'll be paid within 2 installments, the first being in January and then the final around May of 2023. and that'll be the remaining 40% of your award. Another way, so you'll be contacted with us from us through Zoom grants, considering your funding as far as like whether or not the board has approved and whether or not the council has gone through their process. But another really good way to stay connected with us is through our monthly newsletter. We try to send these out at least once a month, sometimes more if something else is happening that is timely. And if you are not signed up, the best way to do this is through our website. You can go to our website at zapisu.org or slco.org/zap, and you will click on the Tools for Grantees and Applicants tab on the left-hand side. And then there will be a button that says Sign up for Zap mailing list, which will take you to a form. You'll fill that out, and you'll start receiving our updates. Let's see. Oh, I just saw a question in the chat. Oh, I missed a couple of them. Let's see. When are financials due? Oh, that's a very good question. I'll be going over that more in the application, but yes. So the financials, if you are if you are applying for under $15,000, your financials will be due at the same time as the main application deadline, which is April 29. Here, I'll go back. It'll still be due April 29 if you're under 15,000. If you're over 15,000, you'll have essentially an extra month. It'll be due May 31st, and that will be anyone for over 15K. And then there was another question. When will you find out if you are eligible? That's a good question. So if you are eligible, if this is your first time applying, we strongly recommend you sending us an email letting us know that you plan to apply, and have a meeting with us if you haven't already. This is just for us to get familiar with you. When you are applying for your application, there's a separate tab that's an eligibility check, and it'll let you know if you're eligible or not. So that will happen fairly quick. And then as you are applying, if you do have any questions, just feel free to send us a message and we can help you with that. Okay, I will keep going. So yes, the newsletter, sign up on our website. Another good way to stay connected with us is through our social media. We are primarily using our Facebook and Instagram account, but we also do have a Twitter. And then YouTube is a really good resource for applicants, especially when you're applying. There are some tutorial videos on there on how to, for example, save Zoom grants to your safe sender list, or for example, if you need to learn how to add a collaborator to your application, there are some tutorial videos on how to do that. There's another question that came in. Any chance next year of raising the 15,000 cutoff? Everything is so much more expensive after the last 2 years. That is a really good question that I don't have an answer to right now, but I'll make a note of that to find out. I believe that that is stated through policy or statute. So that would be something that would have to be revisited by either the board or the council. But I can certainly find an answer to that and get back to you, Cheryl. Good question, though. All right. Another thing, so this is for people that have been approved for Zap funding, but just something to stay in mind of. It's a requirement of Zap recipients that you will have to invite our board to at least one event for free per year. We recommend that you invite them to more than one. just because sometimes they can't make it. But this is a really good opportunity for you to show them what you do in person and see it for themselves. Our board is 100% volunteer and they don't get paid, but they are very passionate about what they do and the work that you all do, and they are always excited and love to see what you guys are up to. And if you want to invite them to an event, this is how you do it. So you'll go to our website. You'll go to the same tab, Tools for Grantees and Applicants. You'll click on the Advisory Board Invitation Form, and then it'll bring you to this sheet, which you will then fill out with the event information. And this can be an event. This can also be if you just want to invite them to your space, if you have a museum or studio, you can invite them to those as well. Okay. Any more questions? I think you should. Any more questions as far as before I jump into the application itself? Let's see. Can we invite the board before we have a grant? Good question. This is specifically for people that have already been funded, especially since typically we have about 200 applicants every year, and so and our board is made up of 11 people. So it's pretty hard for them to be able to make it to everything. So it's mainly just for grantees. Any other questions before I jump into the demo and take a drink of water? Okay, I don't see any others, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump in to the application. Okay. So when applying for Tier 2, the first thing you're gonna do is go to our website at zapisu.org. And you're gonna go to the Tier 2 tab at the top. And there will be a button that says apply here, and you're going to click this button. One really important thing to note is that this button is just for creating an application. So once you have already done this, you won't need to go to this page again. You'll then sign in through Zoom Grants, the platform itself, directly. Otherwise, if you use this link again, it's going to create another application. So just be aware of that when creating. So you're gonna open it up and it'll bring you to the application page. Now, in order to do this, you have to be logged in. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in. If you need to create an account, you can do that through here as well. Just create new Zoom Grants account and you'll fill out this information. It'll send you an email with the link to then log in. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and log in. Okay. So one thing to note is if you already do have an account and you do log in, sometimes it'll take you to your dashboard first. And that's because it'll show you what you currently have associated with your account. If you don't, if you haven't already started your application, you'll then need to go back to our website and click this again, because you haven't shown up. It won't show up because you haven't applied yet. It won't show up in your dashboard. So I'm going to click that again. This time I am logged in, and the page looks slightly different. And so the first thing that you'll do is you'll want to read through, we have these instructions separated out by category. So we have just general Tier 2 funding information that you'll want to read through. Tier 2 eligibility requirements. This kind of has an explanation that's mostly what I just gone over. Funding restrictions is up there, and also the application resource library, and I'll go over that in a minute. But once you, so I just hid those using these buttons right there. But if I didn't do that, I would just scroll down past all of this, and there's the Apply Now button. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And until you click this button, it's not going to let you fill out the information any further. The boxes will be grayed out, and you won't be able to edit anything. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And there's an error. Hold on one moment. Okay, apologies for that. Okay, I'm actually going to stop sharing
You're
my.
working on that, Daniel.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah.
And so maybe if you want to, I can read them and you can we can talk through them while you go ahead and work
Figure
to
that
get
out.
that to come up correctly.
Yeah.
Great. So first question, I hope I'm not missing any, was the one about the $15,000 cutoff, which was been answered, sort of, and we'll get back to you on that. And I agree with the whole revisiting thing. We'll have to see if that's in policy and statute, but we can look at that. Can we invite the board before we have a grant? I mean, you're more than welcome to do that. I believe there's not a conflict in that, from what I understand, because people are always inviting different people to different functions like local governments to let them know what they're doing to be engaged. But I can get back to you on that one. And when we get back to you, we'll get back to everyone, not just the person who turns in that question. And we'll make sure that everyone receives information back on that one. I don't know that it has a benefit to do that or not, because the board members haven't looked at the applications quite yet.
Okay.
Is 179 grantees all tier 2? Yes. Typically, there's around 180 approved grantees per year, and there are 25 tier 1s. So tier 2, it's around 180, give or take. Some years 192s. I think this year it's officially 179 or 183.
Well, 178 this year.
Okay.
183 applied and 178 were 179 were approved, and then unfortunately someone had to return the grant. So
Tier 1 is
178.
22 grantees that are regular arts and culture organizations that we're all familiar with, and then 3 of them are going to be around the zoological area. So around 180 plus the 25 is just over 200 grantees on average per year.
I did figure out what was wrong. So whenever, basically, so to explain to everyone what happened, unfortunately, I had created an application earlier with that account. And so when I was using that apply now link, it was giving it an error, and that's our test account app anyway. So I just quickly created a new account and did exactly what I showed you. I created a new account using that little button there, and then scrolled down, click apply now, and it created it. So we are now at the step that you should also be at when you're first creating your application. And it will give you this message: thank you, your application has been created, you may get started now. So moving on. So apologies for that, everyone. Let me just find where I'm gonna go. All right. So the first thing, once you log in, are the descriptions at the top, which we just went over. And if you're over 15K, if you plan on applying for over 15K this year, you have And you have to have been a Zap recipient for 3 consecutive years. You will be required to have a few additional financial documents, including a peer review letter, something that you would get for your CPA. You would, if you're applying for over between 30 and 60K, you'll 30 and $60,000. You'll have to send in 1 year of a certified financial audit. And if you're applying for over 60,000, you'll have to provide 3 consecutive years of a certified financial audit. And you'll have until May 31st to submit those additional documents. If you don't submit those documents by May 31st, you will not be considered for more than 15,000, and you might be disqualified from review. So please keep in contact with us. And if you're having any trouble getting those documents or uploading them, please just let us know. All right. So I'm going to now go back to the application resource library. So if you remember, if you scroll down past these individual descriptions, it's application resource library. This is going to be a really useful tool for you when you're applying. So for example, this is a link to our discipline definitions, which is on our website. This is the county council district map, and you will want to use this when reporting what district you live in. Your organization. So wherever your organization is primarily doing its programming, this is what you'll want to use when reporting that. And I'll show you where to fill that out later as well in the application. Capacity building resources is another link on our website. We have a web page that just has a few links into any additional funding resources, that kind of thing. Additional data worksheet for compiling only. I'll show you more about this in a minute. Tier 2 scoring criteria. So like I talked about earlier, the scoring criteria that the board uses, they have their chart that they'll use to compare. And this is a copy of that. And then tips and tricks for using Zoom grants. If you have any technical how-tos or anything like that, this is a good just document to refer to when you're filling out your application. Okay, so summary. Oh, I skipped one. Sorry, I apologize. Utah entity number business ID search. This is one of the questions on the application as well. And it brings you to this page, which you'll need to look up your business Utah entity number. So for your application, that's something that we use to track data on our backend. Okay, summary. So this is a bit more thorough than it has been in previous years, but we just want to make sure that you have a full understanding of everything that you'll need to do when filling out your application. Before submitting, you'll want to make sure that all your budget numbers are in and complete and correct. You'll want to make sure that your contact information is correct, all of your questions are answered, and all the necessary documents are provided. Okay. So one of the first things you're going to fill out is your organization DBA. This is the name that you are referred to as in the community. So whatever the community knows you as, this is where you're going to fill out that name. Amount requested, this is where you'll fill out your amount as far as what you're requesting for the 2022 cycle. You'll fill out your name, your legal entity name. This is what's going to match whatever is on your 501c3 document. And then to add an address, you'll click add address and you'll want to fill in your business's address. Additional contact information like telephone number, your CEO or executive director, And then this is where you're going to add collaborators. So whoever creates the main, that creates the application is going to be the main applicant contact and application owner, essentially. So some organizations will create an email and account that is just for their organization. It'll say like development at organization as far as their email goes. So that way it doesn't have to transfer from person to person. Others, they will have it where it's specifically tied to the individual. So whatever your organization has a preference on is how you'll want to create that. But if you want to have multiple people and multiple individuals have access, the way you'll do that is through this. So basically you will add their email address. So for me, I could put in, I can do that. Added 2 additional contacts. That's a really useful tool for if you would like them to be contacted and receiving those updates as far as when they get notices from Zoom grants. So if you've been approved for eligibility, if you've been approved by council, like all those messages that we send out through Zoom grants, or if we have additional questions regarding your application, we'll send it out through that way and they can be contacted. So they would then put in their first name, last name, title, and then you'll want to pay attention to these boxes. So the editing access box gives them access to edit the application. If you don't click this box, they'll just be able to view it and not be able to change any of the answers or go in and add any official data. As you get further in the application process, there will be additional boxes that show up. So for those of you that have applied previously and received funding, you'll notice this is where once contracting comes up, there will be a contract tab and there will be a box for that where if an individual that doesn't own the application but needs to sign the contract, you can then give them access by clicking that box. And additionally, there will be another box for the evaluation. So for every year that you receive funding, you will have to provide an evaluation. And so for those of you that received 2020 funding, you will have to complete your 2020 evaluation by the deadline of this application, so at April 29th, in order to receive funding. This is the way that you'll submit your evaluation is always through the application itself. So you'll go back to your 2020 application within Zoom Grants, and there will be an evaluation button that you can then click on and fill out. Okay. So Utah entity number, this is what I talked about earlier. You'll want to go to that website, find your business and find your correct Utah entity number and fill that out. This is different than your, it's a different number than your donation number. Some people get that confused, but it is a separate thing. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes, making sure I get everything. Oh, charitable solicitation number. Some people get it confused with their charitable solicitation number. Those are 2 separate things. Utah entity number and that. Additionally, if you have a secondary contact, someone else you want to have connected to your application, separate as a collaborator, this is just like for them receiving information, as well as a budget contact. This really helps us if we do have questions about your application or your budget. reaching out to those individuals directly just to make sure we have those clarifications, and that communication channel really helps. And then at the bottom of the page, optional, if you guys have social media links, if you have a Facebook page, an Instagram, a Twitter that you want us to know about so we can stay up to date on what you guys are doing, you can just fill it out here. And that covers the summary. So the next part is the eligibility check. So this is what I talked about earlier. Zoom grants will not stop you from progressing even if you're not eligible. Basically, it'll give you a notice as you fill out these questions saying you're not eligible. For example, if I click that I'm a 501c3, that I am a cultural, or let's say I'm affiliated as something and I'm other. Is your overall organization's primary purpose not botanical? If it's not, it says ineligible. However, it'll still allow you to progress. So that's just something to stay mindful of. But let's say I am a 501c3. I am a cultural organization. I'll then select my discipline. So let's say I'm arts education. Now, if you are unsure of any of these disciplines, you can always contact us and we can help you figure out what best aligns with your organization. During what 12-month time period will you spend your requested 2022 funds? Example, July through June 2023. We've added this question specifically because within the around 200 nonprofits that we've funded previously, they have different fiscal years. And so this provides an opportunity to both designate when you'll use the funding and give that clarification. So that way, if you've received previous year's funding, that it won't overlap. So for example, if your fiscal year is like September 2020, September through September, you then can use your funding from September 2023. Sorry, September 2022. No, sorry, I'm correct. 2023 through 2020, the end of 2024, because we want to be able to give you that full year of a cycle. I hope that makes sense. If not, I can clarify again. Summarize your organization's work. This is just a brief description of what you all do and what you do best. County council district, that's what I was talking about earlier with the district map. You'll want to find your organization, where it falls within what district, and fill that out there. Does your organization have a current board-approved standard of ethics for your organization? This is not a required thing. You do not have to have it. However, we strongly recommend it. This is something that shows the board that you do have a code of ethics and do pay attention to those things and maintain that level of professionalism. And then data, what is the physical address of the majority of your activities take place? This is to provide, so maybe if your organization doesn't have a physical address location, but you do a ton of programming at, like, let's say you're a theater organization and you perform at the Rose, but the Rose is obviously not your own business's building. This is where you would put, oh, we do all our plays at the Rose. And similarly for any kind of other function, if there's some kind of community space or anything like that, this is where you would fill that out. Documents requested. This is where you will attach your tax exempt document. And that's the only required one if you are applying for under 15K. if you're applying for over that, there will be the additional documents requested there. Okay, so now that is the eligibility check page. Now we're going to go to the application questions. We do have instructions for this as well. You'll want to read through those and make sure that you understand everything. A couple of quick notes. If you are requesting under $15,000 or less, there are 3 questions at the end that you will not answer. That's to give everyone fairness, and you don't get any bonus points, unfortunately, if you do decide those. We'll just contact you and ask you to remove that answer. Additionally, a video sample, if you'd like to show us a video that you've seen, or sorry, that you've made, or something that represents your organization, we encourage you to upload that. But you will need to paste an embed code. This is not a URL, it's a separate thing. So it is a specific code that creates a video window. So if you have a video that's on YouTube or Vimeo or something, you can click the share button and there will be like a URL, but there's a separate thing below that that'll say like copy embed code, and you can use that. Data questions have been moved to Smartsheets. I will go over that a bit more in a minute. So going through this, your organization's board approved mission statement, we'll want to know that. What year did your organization confirm nonprofit status? That's something that changed, I believe, last year. We used to ask the history of your organization. We now just need to, it can be very brief, just a year, but also if you do want to provide a bit more context, like let's say your organization has been around for 10 plus years, but you didn't get your 501c3 status until 3 years ago. That's something that you could explain there. If your organization was approved for funds in 2021 Tier 2 funding cycle, please briefly explain where your organization is at in this process of using your funds. That's just an opportunity for you to basically explain a progress report on what you're currently using the funding and how it's going. Total operating expenses from your last completed fiscal year, subtract out in-kind expenses. This is something that we use for reporting as well. So this will be just a simple number, and this will directly relate to the budget tab, which I'll then show in a minute. But yeah, we just want a simple answer as possible, and you'll subtract out the in-kind expenses if you have any. And this is where kind of those questions will change depending on what you are asking for. So if you're a project and you select that, it's going to ask you a few different questions, or you'll answer them differently than if you are just asking for operational funding for arts and culture organization. For example, explain the project you will request funding for. This is the opportunity for you to explain what that specific project is. If you are not an arts and culture organization specifically, and you are applying for Zap funding, we do require that you have separate budget and financials separated out from that to be able to show like what those expenses and incomes are for that specific project. Please give a brief description of other services your organization provides. That would be just like, again, if you are not an arts and culture program organization, this is just an opportunity to explain to the board why your organization decided to create that project specifically.
Daniel, at some point while we're in the application, we do have some questions piling up when there's a
Oh.
natural break in the application before you flip to something else. Let's just take a pause and answer some questions if that's okay while they're fresh.
Yeah, I'll quickly go through these last couple ones and then take a break and ask some questions. Okay, so about your organization, explain your organization structure. This is just explaining the staff and your makeup of what your org the people that are in it. Explains your organization's effort to reach underserved communities in Salt Lake County. This was a question that was added specifically out of the Zap Equity Initiative. We do want to make sure that the funding that is coming from Zap is being reached by all communities, whether it's socioeconomic or even just by location. We just want to make sure that the Zap funding is reaching all parts of the county. Did your organization adapt any programming due to COVID over the last year? We know that COVID has continued to fluctuate. This is pretty much the same question as last year. We just want to have a space for you to speak to how it's impacted you in the past year, and if you have like preparations for another variant or whatever comes through. We just wanted to give you that opportunity to be able to speak to that. And over 15K. So these are the questions I referred to earlier. If you're requesting over 15K, you'll need to answer these. Under, we just please ask that you leave this blank. And then if you do answer them on accident, we'll just ask you to remove them. Okay, that'll be a good place to stop. I can jump in and answer some questions. I don't know where my questions went, but okay. Is there a size limit to the video? There isn't, just because it's more of an embed code, you're not actually importing the video into Zoom Grants itself. So that's going to more depend on where you're uploading it to, which is YouTube or Vimeo or whichever. I don't think YouTube has a file size limit, and then Vimeo, I think it depends on if you pay for it or not. Let's see. Can you have more than one primary space where you provide service? That's a good question. If you'd like, feel free to email me, and that's something that like we could figure out together, but you'll want to provide just one location. But we can figure out what best works for that question itself. Because I know sometimes that can be tricky. It's mainly for us to be reporting what or rather where people are doing things within the community. We actually create a heat map that shows where all of the events and everything are being located, and this is something that we like to show to our board and elected officials. So that's kind of why that question is worded the way it is. Let's see. Just noted. Oh, thank you. I'll fix that. Let's see. So understanding that this should not be the primary source of finances, should we not be requesting any more than we have in our current finances? That's a good question. So the answer is no. You can request the amount that you think is appropriate. That number is up to you. The board's best practice is to look for a one-to-one match. So they're looking to see in whatever it is you're requesting, they do want to see within like the budget itself if you're receiving something that adds up to close to that number or exactly that number or even over. But it's not a requirement. It's just something that they consider when giving those grants. And if you have been a previous grantee for a number of years, and let's say your ask jumps significantly, that'll definitely be something that you'll want to explain within the ask of what you plan to use those for and what that substantial increase would mean. I hope that answers your question, Rachel. Let's see, 179 grantees. Oh, is 170 grantees all tier 2? Yes, it is. So for this year, it's 179 grantees, which is a lot. And then there's another 25 between tier 1 and tier 1 and zoological. So over 200 total within Zap grantees, but 179 are tier 2. And it looks like those are all of the ones that have been asked, I think. There was a typo and I'll fix that. Oh, typo in that comment, got it. Okay, yeah, that looks like everything. So I'm now going to jump into this last little piece of the applications that questions themselves. So previously you used to have to answer these within Zoom grants. We've now created an additional form that is a lot easier to essentially it'll be easier for us to be able to translate all of that information into the data that we need it for. So if you go to, in question 17, if you go to this link, it'll bring you to this smart sheet. This is the same way that it was last year. It's been modified just slightly, a couple more locations and question formats, but it's essentially the same form. You will have to complete this in one setting. Smartsheet will not save your data. So what we've created for you is in the application resource of Zoom grants, there is a additional data worksheet. And this is something, it's a Word doc that you can download, and it has all the same questions as what's in the Smartsheet. And so you can work on the Word doc, and then once you have everything figured out, you can go back to the Smartsheet and fill it out. It asks for things like full-time employee, part-time employees, number of volunteers. It'll ask you what kind of events you've held during the last year, like virtual or in person. And then it's going to ask you for how many events you've held in each of the municipalities. So Cottonwood Heights, Draper, Mill Creek, all of those. Now, once you've filled out your sheet and you have completed all this data, you'll then need to click the I understand that I return to my 2022 Tier 2 application and click the button. So you can get a copy of your responses if you like, but then you'll click submit. You'll go back to your application, go back to question 17, and then click this checkbox to say, I have filled out this form. And then we'll check to make sure that both of those things are completed. And we will try our best to make sure that everything is completed and accurate, up to date and everything, but ultimately it is up to each individual organization to make sure this is completed. Okay. Is there any questions about that? No. Okay. So that completes, oh, here's one. What's the time window on the additional data question? How many events have you had all 2021 past 6 months? It is the past year. It does explain that within the directions, but basically it's just, yeah, the past year of your events. most completed fiscal year. So whatever that is for your organization, that's how you'll answer. Okay. So next is the budget tab. This is where you're going to fill out all of your expenses and incomes and all that fun stuff. So you have the instructions at the top. You'll want to read through these again. Make sure you understand how to fill out everything correctly. If your revenue or expense does not match between table 1 and table 2, you'll have to provide an explanation of why that is. In-kind, the in-kind revenue and the in-kind expense line for each year, you'll want to make sure you fill that out correctly and subtract in-kind revenue from that previous application number. But basically, you'll fill out each of these lines. So for example, the first line is admission, tuition, enrollment. Second line is contracted services, concessions, merchandise, those kind of things. And you'll fill that out for the most recently completed fiscal year. So that will be probably, for most of you, it'll be sometime in 2021. You'll fill out your current projected numbers for this year. So that'll be 2022. And then your projected year, which is your 2023 year. That may vary slightly depending on your organization's fiscal year, but for most of you, that's how it should be. And then same thing for your expense and funding uses. You'll want to fill out your 2021, 2022, 2023, or whatever timeline that is for your organization. And this will be everything from salaries to royalties, if you have any, general administration, fundraising numbers, all of that kind of stuff you'll fill out in these 3 columns. And then at the bottom, the budget narrative. The budget narrative is going to be your best friend, explaining anything from why you have the numbers that you do, what the funding is projected for, and why. Oh, and then one thing to note is that when completing the projected year for the 2023, we ask that you fill this out in assumption that you're receiving the 2022 grant for Zap. So assuming that you get our funding, you'll want to include that within your answers. Let me see if I make sure I got everything. Yeah, I think that's everything. Again, like with the budget narrative, this is just going to be the best place to explain any of those details of the funding that you need, or any like what you think might be a glaring issue if someone who isn't as familiar with your budget were to look at, if there was a sudden dip in revenue, say a pandemic, something that would affect the financials, this is the opportunity to explain that. Okay. So the last tab is the documents. And this is where you'll upload again if you have the required if you're under 15, the only thing you're gonna need is the organization chart. Even if you're volunteer run, this is just to give the board an idea of who makes up your organization and what they do. So that'll be your organization chart. And then for people who are requesting over 15,000, this will be things like your peer review letter, your board, all of that will be in here. I do want to make a note that all applications are considered public record. So if people want to see a copy of your application, they can. They submit a grandma request through the county and they are able to access that information. We do, of course, remove the sensitive information of that application itself, but they are allowed to see it. Additionally, if you were very curious to see how so-and-so filled out their application, you would be able to request that document as well. Also, in additional documents, one of the things to note is that that is another place to upload if you'd like anything that you would like the board to see. So if there's like a program, pamphlet, something like that that you would want the board to see, photos, pictures worth 1,000 words. So the board loves to see things that your organization does. If you'd like to upload a logo, that sometimes helps us as staff when we're promoting your events and such, or photos as well. But that's another good place to, if you just want to upload any additional things that you would want the board to see. Okay, I'm going to check the chat one more time and then I'm going to go over how to submit your application. Okay. Okay. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into that. So you've reached this point in the process where you have filled out everything. All of the questions have been answered. All of the budget has been answered and filled out. You then will have the opportunity to submit your document, or sorry, submit your application. As it says right now, application status not submitted. I haven't clicked it. And if I did right now, it says you haven't done these things. And it'll give you this checklist of required fields that are missing answers. And so if you do see any of these, you'll want to fill those out and make sure everything is completed. You'll then be able to click submit now and it will submit the application. I wanted to reiterate that you do have the opportunity to edit your application up until the deadline. So you can fill out your application, submit it, and then go back and edit it later if you like. But we just ask that when you do submit your applications, it's going to have all the correct information that we need. Once you have now created your application and let's say you want to go back and edit something, whether you've submitted it or not, the way you're going to do that is you're just going to go to zoomgrants.com and it'll bring you back to that dashboard. It's, oh, not that. Zoomgrants.com. And it's not letting me do that. Okay, another thing you can do. Google. Zoom Grants. And it'll take you to their page and you'll be able to log in using this button at the top. And you'll be able to log in. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to actually go back to that. Now let's say you needed to log in and you forgot your password. It happens to the best of us. It's something that always happens. You can click this forgot password button. You'll put in your email address and then you'll click the button recover reset password. So if I did mine. you click Recover Password, and then you'll need to click this box that says, I acknowledge receiving a password recovery link, and then it'll send it to your email. And it is a good reminder, so we will be doing our best to check and make sure that everyone is submitting their applications at the correct time. We'll be reminding you about the deadline, but it is up to your organization to complete that. Okay, so that concludes the application demo. Does anyone have any questions before I continue? Let's see. Can you download it as you're editing it, or in what format, or is just once to complete it, or is it important to saving somewhere as you go? Oh, for the application. We highly recommend you answering your enters within Zoom Grants, within the fields themselves, and then copying it to an external document. We have found that some issues in the past, or at least I've heard of issues in the past, where there's some formatting issues if you, say, have a Word document and you copy it into Zoom Grants. So we recommend answering within Zoom Grants itself and then copying it to an external document to save your answers. And that does remind me of another good point. So sometimes when you're filling out a field, you'll then see this, like, as you answer something and you click out of it, you see that brief saving window. Every once in a while, we have seen someone have an issue where it'll say saving and it just continues to save. And that means that there's been a saving error, which means that you'll need to refresh the page. But anything that was entered in and had that saving error means that it could possibly be lost. So when you'll refresh the page, you'll need to see if that answer has stayed or not, and possibly re-enter it in if it was lost. Let's see. So if I have other folks who are collaborating, I am assuming they need logins as well. Yes. So what you can do, oh wow, I'm right here. If you'd like to have collaborators on this application, they can either create their own account right now, just as is, or you can create your application first, add them as a collaborator here, and it'll send them an email to which they can then be able to essentially create an account and then log in and edit it. I will say though, there is a difference between just creating a Zoom Grants account yourself and being added as a collaborator. When you get an email that says you've been added as a collaborator to this account, and you haven't created one before, it creates a collaborator account is what it's called. And so it's basically an account that has the minimum editing capabilities, where it's just an account to go edit this application. And so if you need help with any kind of adding collaborators or account info, anything like that, or if you need to have an old application be transferred into someone else's new email, please just send me a note on my email and I can help with that. Okay, so it looks like that's all the questions for now. Okay. Cool. And this kind of just goes over what I just barely said. This is the application contact. That's going to be the person that owns the application. That'll be the person that, like, if we are emailing through Zoom Grants, they're going to be the first person to get pinged by us saying, hey, there's a new message. They're the person that has all of the editing rights and the access to give other people access. Collaborators can be invited to applications, but they won't have the same editing rights as the contact person. Like, they won't be able to add other collaborators themselves, that kind of thing. And once invited and given viewing privilege, editing viewing privileges, the application will show up under there's application list in the login, so it'll show up in their dashboard. Final reminder, the application due date is Friday, April 29 at 5 p.m. No late applications. If you are requiring or requesting over 15,000, you will have an additional 30 days until May 31st to submit those additional documents. But your primary application still must be submitted by the April 29 deadline. We highly recommend that you whitelist or add to your safe sender list notices at zoomgrants.com, so that way you are receiving any emails that we or Zoom Grants send. We recommend saving a copy. You beat me to it, Rachel. We recommend saving a copy of your responses submitted in Zoom Grants into an outside document of your own, just for safekeeping and for not losing any of that information. I'll say this again, please do not hesitate to contact us so we can help you with any questions or any issues that you are having filling out your application. And for more Zoom Grants tips, there is that document that says Zoom Grants tips and tricks in the application resource library. And with that, oh, there was a question. I'm gonna take more questions now, and then we'll wrap up. Let's see. Can one person be invited to multiple application accounts, i.e. an accountant helping with 2 applications? Yes, so you can invite multiple people to collaborate, and so that way you can give them that editing access. Remember, you'll just check that box that says that they can edit the application themselves. So if the accountant is filling out the budget tab, let's say, like they'll have that access. But also remember that on that summary page, there will be that additional section to fill out any additional contacts. So for example, it says budget contact. We'll want to have that information separately so that we can contact them that way. Adding a person as a collaborator, even if they have editing access, I don't believe that if we send a general update about your application, they'll receive any contact or receive any communication about that unless you added them to the additional contacts list.
Other questions can just be asked at this point, I think, right, Daniel? And if you want to chat them, you can, or if you can just want to ask them, we're open.
Yeah, Is there anything you can think of, Samantha, that I might have skipped over, or maybe I went a little fast on?
I think someone's asking for a copy of the slide deck so we can just talk about what you're going to post and then what the future workshops are. I think that might be helpful if other staff members want to join, so more than one person can be a part of it, and then available materials to help you prepare might be good to address. That's what the question in the piece is.
Totally. So as far as sending out the slide decks, we're actually going to post an application, like a recording of this online. So you'll have access to not only the slides, but also everything that I'm talking about verbally, access to those questions that were said, any kind of that material as well. So stay tuned for that. And then also we are having 2 more application workshops, one on the 19th of March and then another on the 22nd. The one on March 19 is from 10 a.m. to noon, and the one on March 22nd is from 2 to 4 p.m. So if you have additional people you work with that you'd like to attend this workshop, they have 2 more opportunities for that. But otherwise, yeah, please stay in contact. Subscribe for our newsletter, stay up to date on social media, all those things. All right. let's see. And I can send the slide deck to you individually, Marin, if you'd like. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So it looks like that's everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and thank you so much everyone for coming. I really appreciate you all being here, and this was my first time as doing this, so this was a really good learning opportunity for me. But I've really enjoyed seeing you all here, and thank you.